Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and I think it is fair to say that this brewery are one of the best known names when it comes to Swedish craft brewing, and they're probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden. It's a little bit of a special brew. It's a style that I very much enjoy, but one that we haven't had from these guys in quite some time. So I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return to the wonderful OO Brewing. Now, this particular beer is called 300 Crystal. So it was brewed for OO Brewing's 300th batch, but this comes in at 13% ABV. It's a barley wine aged in bourbon barrels, and apparently it's been brewed exclusively with different types of crystal malt. So that should be very, very interesting. But yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a barley wine from OO Brewing. The last one, I believe, was the Long Boil barley wine, which we reviewed back in about 2018 or something like that. But yeah, as I say, it's a style that I know these guys can do very well. OO Brewing are very good when they put their minds to pretty much any beer style that you can think of. So yeah, very curious to see what this special one is going to have in store for us. It is supposed to be a very, very nice beer, this one. But yeah, let's crack on then and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from OO Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the channel's geography-based tagging system. Put in your hometown, state, whatever into the search bar. If I've reviewed beers from your area, they will pop up. And remember, you can also check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist, and that is being added to whenever I get the opportunity, which is very often, as I'm sure you've gathered by now. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and talk a little bit about OO Brewing. So OO Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded back in 2011 by Olaf and Ole Anderson, who are childhood friends. But for many years, they were also avid home brewers. But they were always very, very interested in beers and trying different beers from across the world. But Ole has apparently been involved in the Gothenburg beer scene since pre-drinking age. He was the original head brewer at Stigbergets Brewery, and this is where the original OO Brewing beers were produced. He developed quite a few famous beers here in Sweden. The Narangi, which was one of the first New England IPAs here in Sweden. That was released under the OO Brewing name. Then the GBG Beer Week beer for 2016 and the Amazing Haze, those were released under the Stigbergets Brewery name, and those are three of what I would say are four of the kind of groundbreaking New England IPAs here in Sweden. The other one, of course, being Opigårds Brewery's New Sweden IPA. But yeah, Ole Anderson was one of the ones who really launched the New England IPA style here. But he is, of course, still in charge of the brewing operations at OO Brewing, and while Ole is managing the brewing side of things, Olaf is taking care of the business side of the brewery. He worked in Copenhagen for quite a while and was doing things by distance for OO, but that has changed. But these guys really just wanted to make beers that they enjoyed drinking themselves. Things really kicked off for this brewery in April of 2017 when Ole took the decision to leave Stigbergets and fully invest his time in OO Brewing. So the company invested in a premises in Hisingen near the Tingstedt Bridge in Gothenburg, and this facility is equipped with a 2,000 litre brew kit, which means they can brew up to 500,000 litres of beer per year. In their first year of operations there, they produced 100,000 litres, and they have just been expanding this over the last few years. They do have plans to expand up to capacity, but in 2020 they apparently brewed around 300,000 litres, and I think they have expanded that a little bit over the last few years as well. Recently, I think it was last year in 2021, they took over the premises of Bang Restaurant, and this is going to be their new tap room. and this opened in the summer of 2021, and I believe it's been going very, very well. But yeah, it's these guys, as I say, they've done lots and lots of different styles of beer. That is a place I do want to go and check out at some point when I make it back up to Gothenburg. But as of November 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 105 different kinds of beer. They are best known for their different kinds of New England hazies, and you should look to try probably the Narangi New England IPA. The Arctos Imperial Stout's very good. The Long Boil Barleywine, those come out like once a year, usually in the winter time, so we'll be seeing those soon, I'm sure. But yeah, you know, the Pivot Pills was always a very good one. Muscles Double IPA, and the Evergreen was also very nice as well if you want a more West Coast type IPA. But like I say, for me, OO Brewing is a very, very solid all-round brewery. They always do really nice beers. So when they release something a little bit special like this, it is always worth kind of paying attention to, because they will, you know, go that extra mile. Or extra kilometre, we should say. We're using the metric system when it comes to things like this. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about OO Brewing for the moment. As of November 2022, when we're filming this review, they've produced about 105 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and there will no doubt be more added to that list at some point in the future. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different kinds of beer that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at this beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty plain, but you can quite clearly see the OO Brewing, Olaf and Ole Anderson, which is what it stands for. There's the nice O on the bottle cap of this one. But as we say, it's very rare that OO Brewing will release a beer in bottles these days. They've probably just got some bottles kind of sitting aside for the big beasts like this. But as I said to you earlier, this one is batch number 300. It's a barley wine brewed exclusively with crystal malt, and then it's aged in bourbon barrels for 12 months. So yeah, it should be pretty cool. I believe this beer cost me 100 Swedish kroner, so that is about 10 euros, probably about £9 sterling, and maybe about $11 American, something like that. But like I say, 13% bourbon barley wine with only crystal malt in it. That should be pretty cool. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this beer is going to be like. Hopefully it's a good one. So, this does look pretty good. You can see from the pour there, this thing is pretty damn viscous. So, I think this might be right up my street. So, before the head disappears on this beer, you can see that it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say, it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of, I would say, a kind of medium beige, almost fawn coloured head. I mean, just look at that. That looks very, very nice. But you can see there's a few bigger bubbles kind of sitting toward the top, and we've got a lovely big, I would say, just this is one of the darkest barley wines I've ever come across. So this has got to be a very long wort boil. In terms of colour, this one is like a really dark ebony rosewood type colour. I mean, normally these beers are a little bit more kind of mahogany and things, but yeah, this is pretty interesting. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, and the head has faded away to just be a very kind of thin, foamy layer. But yeah, it does look pretty damn good actually. But as I say, a lovely sort of dark ebony rosewood colour. There's a little bit of a kind of chestnutty, if you shine the light through it, you do get a little bit of an almost chestnutty colour, but this beer is pretty much ebony rosewood. It's very rare to find a beer that is darker in colour than this. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to beers that are, you know, quite as dark as this, it's quite difficult to affect the colour with adjuncts and and barrel aging. But yeah, I think probably the colour of this one is down to the presence of all the different types of crystal malt. But I have to say, this is one of the darkest barley wines that I've come across on the channel here ever. So yeah, this will be quite interesting. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the nose of this one then and see what it has in store for us. As I say, one of the darkest barley wines I've come across, but it's not unheard of to have barley wines that are this dark, and you can see the head has just faded away on this one. But let's take a wee look at the nose and see what we have with this beer then. I'm very, very curious to see what this is going to give us. Oh yeah, that one is an absolute monster. This is a big, big boozy beast. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this beer is going to be an absolute monster. You can tell straight away. I'd be curious to know whether this one's double mash actually, or whether it's just a very, very long boil barley wine. So yeah, because it has a little bit of the dryness, but it's also just got that big, highly caramelized thing to it. But yeah, you get a lovely, just as an overview, you get lots of nice kind of woodiness out of this one. Big, big brown sugars, a little bit dry, but also some nice kind of brown sugars, you know, sweeter brown sugars in there as well, which makes me think, you know, a bit of long boil and maybe a double mash or something. But yeah, it's got the sweetness you want, it's got the fruitiness you'd like, and it's also got the big kind of woody characters as well. I mean, it is a lovely, lovely smelling beer, this one. I do like how it all goes together. Really interesting. Yeah, awesome smelling beer, I have to say. Let's try and break this down and just describe it a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the backbone of the beer here is it's just lovely. So straight away, you can smell that smooth American oak in there. You get that. I always find American oak is a little bit smoother than European oak. European oak gives you a bit more dryness, but smooth American oak in there. There's a little bit of vanilla in there as well, and of course you get the kind of bourbon, the brown sugars from the kind of bourbon spirit in this one. But yeah, aroma wise, this one is quite nice, for sure. So yeah, the woody backbone, the bourbon brown sugars, and then yeah, just a little bit of kind of vanilla character in there. But on top of that, you've got all the big kind of chewy brown sugars that you expect. There's a little bit of an almost like kind of rye bready character to this one, and I think I might have had a contextual cue with that, because I did see on the bottle that it said it contained a little bit of malted rye. But yeah, you do definitely have a little bit of that kind of brown, that sweet brown rye bready character to this beer. So yeah, the way that it goes together in this one is really, really quite nice. Yeah, I do think it goes together really, really well in this one. You've got that, as I say. Yeah, on top of that, you have that really nice brown sugar. You have that, the woody notes and the bourbon brown sugars. Then you've got a layer of that kind of sweet German rye bread type quality. It's almost a little bit kind of cakey in a sense as well. It's like a kind of Christmas puddingy type thing almost. You do get a little bit of that, but then above that, you're getting all these layers of brown sugar. So you can smell the kind of more leathery treacle molasses sort of thing, and that's an indicator, along with the colour, that this beer has had, that this barley wine has had a very, very long wort boil. So you get that nice leathery brown sugar, but you get the slightly sweeter treacle molasses on top of that, and you do also get a little bit of a straight up sweet caramel to this one. There are maybe one or two very slightly nutty aromas to the beer as well. And then yeah, there's a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note to this one. So yeah, I do really like how this beer goes together in that sense. It gets a big thumbs up from me from that particular viewpoint. So yeah, aroma wise, this is very, very nice actually. Yeah, for me, this beer, it goes together really. For me, it goes together really quite it goes to me, for me, it goes together really, really nicely on the kind of malty side of things. It gives you everything you would expect, but it's got a nice kind of big depth to it in a lot of ways. I think this is going to be quite complex when we actually taste the thing. On the hoppy side of the beer then, as we say, this one's been bourbon barrels for about 12 months, so quite a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it. And remember, you can age these beers for even longer in the bottle. You can keep them for years and you're still going to enjoy them. But when it comes to the hoppy side of the beer at this present time, just after the beer's been released, I think you still get a little touch of earthiness out of it. There is a little bit of a kind of floral character, and there is also a wee bit of a grassy sort of thing as well. So it's got a wee bit of the earthiness, a wee bit of a grassy sort of note to it, and a little bit of a floral character too. But aroma wise, this is very, very nice. I think this one goes together very, very well. I like that little bit of depth that the hops give you, but the fruity side of this one's very nice too. I mean, you do get this little backbone of an almost like Christmas puddingy fruit loaf type thing, but the fruits in this beer are lovely. I mean, you've got a wee bit of the sharper raisin, but then you've got plums and a drier prune and kind of datey character in there. And yeah, you've got figs, black currants, blackberries, just everything like that. You've got everything like that in this beer, which is absolutely great. I really like how all of this pieces together. So it's awesome. I think this, for me, this beer goes together very, very well actually. So a big thumbs up from me for this beer aroma on the aroma side of things. I'm just really curious to see what it's going to have in store for us, but beautiful smelling beer, this one. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to kind of ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in, but I think it's about time that we try this one. So yeah, this one is the 300 Crystal, a 13% bourbon barley-aged barley wine from Brewing in Gothenburg up on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck into this. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is absolutely lovely. And I think that's an awesome barley wine. I'm just going to say that straight away. Big thumbs up to Brewing for this one. Is, I mean, what I would say about this, it's one of these beers that it doesn't do anything surprising when you think about the style, but it's just really, really nicely done. You can't knock this beer in any way at all because it is just so nicely done. So this one gets a big thumbs up from me. Brewing have done an awesome job with this. Yeah, just as first overview, the woodiness is there, the brown sugars are there, you've got a little bit of the dryness as well, you've got a sweet kind of, you've got the sweetness, you've got the fruits, you've got everything you would want from this style, but it's also just it's one of these beers that's just really, really nicely done. So yeah, potentially, I can't remember the long boil barley wine that well, to be honest with you, but this is potentially one of the best beers I've had from Brewing. But that's the thing is, when I say this, we try so many IPAs and things from them, it's a bit difficult to distinguish between those. But when you get something like this that's quite different and it stands out a bit, for me that's the beer that really sticks in mind, if we can say that. But yeah, I like how this goes together, absolutely. Yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think is pretty damn awesome. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Anyway, let's break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. That's the whole point of the video. So, middle third of your palate, you've got this lovely kind of woody, you've got this lovely smooth woody backbone there. As you go further back on that middle third of your palate, it's a little bit drier, but as you come further forward, it's a wee bit smoother. So you've got a wee touch of vanilla coming out further forward, but then yeah, you get the kind of drier woody notes behind that. But above that, just kind of sitting on top of that woody layer, you've got a wee touch of a more, as I say, you've got a little touch of a more kind of bourbon, brown sugar type thing going on with this beer. So again, I like how that goes together. So you've got a wee bit of that. You do have a wee bit of that kind of, yeah, bourbon, brown sugary sort of thing going on with this beer, as I've said. And yeah, the way that goes together is it is really, really nice. So the bourbon brown sugars kind of sit there on top of the wood, and I'd say it's that woodiness and kind of bourbon brown sugar quality that comes out a wee bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste with this beer. So for me, that's very, very nice. On top of that, though, you start to get the actual barley wine elements of the beer. So above the kind of bourbon brown sugars, this is when you start to get a little bit of the kind of rye bready character coming out of it. So there's a lovely little bit. There's a lovely bit of that. You can just feel it's quite dense, and at the same time it's quite sweet, and it feels as if it's like soaked in brandy or something. So above that bourbon layer, you have that thick rye bready character that I was talking about, which I really quite enjoy. And then above all of that, you've got the big brown sugary characters as well, which are awesome. So the rye bready note, I think, is quite straightforward, as I say, just soaked in kind of brandy a little bit. Then you've got the brown sugar layer. So the base layer of the brown sugar is a kind of it's more like a really, I would say, it's kind of like a leathery, like treacle molasses sort of thing, but above that you've got the slightly sweeter treacle molasses. The thing is about this beer, you can tell it has had a fairly long wort boil, but you also have to remember that when you barrel age beers like this, you're going to lose a little bit of the mouthfeel. You sacrifice a wee bit of the mouthfeel to get these big infused flavours in the beer. So I wonder if this beer, if the base beer had not been barrel aged, would it have felt a little bit drier and a little bit kind of thicker in a way? But yeah, as I say, you do get a little bit of that dry leathery. You do get a little bit of that dry kind of leathery brown sugar out of this one, but then on top of that, as I say, there's a slightly more oily treacle molasses. Above that, you start to get the sweeter caramel, which is kind of interesting, and you can feel that it just kind of, the brown sugars kind of accumulate in the middle of your palate, and just everything goes together very, very well in this one. So it gets a thumbs up from me. But yeah, flavor wise, this beer goes together like really, really nicely from the brown sugary perspective, and it does also get a little bit sweeter the further you go into the aftertaste too. What you will find is that on top of the brown sugars, you do have this almost kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type flavour, and that kind of spreads out from the dead centre of your palate. Remember, in the dead centre of your palate, you'll get the epicentre of all these brown sugars and the big boozy side of things. So yeah, as you go further out from that, you get a little bit more biscuity and stuff, and then yeah, further forward on the palate, you start to get a few kind of nutty undertones and things like that. It's a lovely, as I say, it's a lovely, lovely beer with this one. Our lovely beer with this beer. I think it goes together really nicely. So it gets a big thumbs up from big thumbs up from me. Yeah, that's the middle third of the palate, and that is the most complex part of the beer. So let's move on to the back third of the palate then and see what we have there. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build-up in the beer. So yeah, good little bit of bready build-up in this one. You can feel that. It is the kind of sweet rye bread again, but the base of the back third of the palate, you get the woody character in there, and the woody character is of course a little bit drier. Above that, you still get the bourbon sugars, and they feel just very slightly toasty in this sense. And then you get you start to get the big kind of bready notes out of the beer. So yeah, you can feel that rye bread layer is a little bit taller, but it's also a wee touch kind of drier as well, actually. But you, in fairness, you do still get a little bit of that almost kind of brandy soaked vibe to the to the rye bread in this one. Definitely, yeah. Definitely a little bit of that kind of brandy, cognac soaked rye bread. And as I say, that layer is a little bit taller. Then above that, you can feel the more airy and yeasty aspects to this beer. So it's like a very sweet wholemeal brown bread with a little bit of honeycomb and all this kind of stuff going on. But yeah, the back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just squashes together that little bit more and kind of condenses down. And yeah, this is what you would expect from the beer. But in terms of the malt base and the barrel aging, beautiful, beautiful barley wine. This one, like I say, I don't think it's an over. How do we say, an over exaggeration to say this could potentially be the best OO brewing beer that I've had, and we've had some awesome beers from these guys over the years. So yeah, this is probably one of the ones that is going to stick in the mind a little bit. I might need to buy another bottle of this and just kind of keep it, and look at this in a couple of years again or something. But this is very, very nice. On the hoppy side of things, then I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side of things quite a little bit. So hoppy side of the beer, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it does give you a little bit of a kind of floral note. But as I say, bourbon, when you've bourbon barrel aged this beer, it's a year old, the hoppy character has dropped out quite a bit, and you are kind of still getting the remnants of this though. But round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is a little bit lighter and more grassy. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is pretty nice. But yeah, right, yeah, the front, the green component, you can see there is just a little bit of that floral note there. The grassiness, the green component in this beer is quite oily for me, and you would expect this when you've got such a heavy malt base in the beer. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the kind of fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, and it's quite sort of it really is quite, it is like a brandy or like brandy, sherry, cognac soaked bread. Like you do get that in that border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Then the base of the front third of your beer is really smooth and woody, and again a little bit more kind of just that smooth kind of more wholemeal brown bready character. But then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. I would be very curious to know what hops are used in this one, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's something along the lines of English Bramling's Cross, or maybe like if it's American, a bit of Cascade and a bit of Chinook, something like that. It's very old school, I think, in terms of what hops are going into this beer. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, then let's look at that fruity side of things. When you take the beer in, it's a little bit more raisiny. It's a little bit more oily and plummy. And then underneath that, you start to get the drier prunes, and then like a kind of datey and peary sort of base. This is at the back of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward, you start to get a little bit of a more oily figgy character toward the middle of the front third of your palate. Then it evolves to be a bit more black curranty on the base of the front half, and then above that you start to get a little bit more of a kind of blackberry type vibe to it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business from that perspective for me is really, really quite nice. So yeah, raisin, bit of juicy plum, then prune, date, pear, bit of fig. There is a bit of sultana almost to this one as well, dried white green grapes. You've got a lot of those kind of dry fruity characters coming out at the back of that front half of the front third of your palate. But then as you move further forward, you start to get more oily fig, you get a little bit of blackcurrant, you get a little bit of blackberry and things. And as I say, the way everything goes together is just very, very nice. So yeah, this beer gets a big, big thumbs up from me. I really like how this one goes together actually. So yeah, flavour wise, beautiful, beautiful beer. I can feel the booze on this one going to my head a little bit, which is not surprising considering it's a 13% barley wine. I'm going to just sip on this one myself and do some more coding after the video. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes sometimes when you review beers like this. But this is a beautiful barley wine. In terms of the mouthfeel then, absolutely full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's a big, thick, oily beast, this one. You wouldn't expect anything less. You know, at the same time, it does have an element of cleanliness to it. And I do really like how that goes together in this one. Yeah, big, thick, oily, but still clean barley wine. In terms of IBUs, you know, there is a little bit of bitterness to this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this is, you know, 20, 30 IBUs, something like that. You are getting a little bit of bitterness from the hops in this, but of course, the longer you age this beer, the more the hoppy bitterness is going to drop out. The malty side of things, you've got the woody dryness in there, you've got the kind of bready character that's giving you a little bit of oiliness and a little bit of graininess in there, and you've also got that little bit of you do also have that little bit of sweet caramelly character as well. You've got big oily brown sugars in this one, which is what you want from a barley wine. You've got all the subtleties in there. The malt base and the kind of barrel aging side of this beer is beautifully done. The hoppy character gives you a bit of depth, and then the fruitiness in this one is really nice and oily. You get a mixture of dry fruits and the more oily punchy sweet fruits. All I can say about this beer, beautiful, beautiful barley wine, and potentially the best beer I've tried from Brewing yet. So that's not a statement I take lightly, but this one is absolutely worth trying. Beautiful, beautiful barley wine. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this was the batch 300 Crystal barley wine from Brewing up in Gothenburg. Beautiful, beautiful beer, absolutely worth trying. It is a little bit pricey, but you know, you're not going to be disappointed with spending 100 kroner on this thing. I will tell you that right away. But yeah, potentially the best Brewing beer I've reviewed for you here on the channel, and these guys, you know, I always keep an eye on what they're putting out. So yeah, try this one for yourself and see what you think. Beautiful, beautiful beer. Probably my favourite barley wine as well that I've reviewed in quite a wee while. So yeah, take that statement as you wish, but I think this was very, very nicely done. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brewing, and we will be returning to these guys very, very soon. But in the meantime, check out my social media, check out theirs, but most importantly, get yourself a bottle of the 300 Crystal barley wine from because you're not going to regret it. Slange it, Skull, cheers, see you guys in the next review.